Good morning, Shavua Tov, Agutavach. Welcome. Thanks for tuning in to Kila Chari Torah's daily Halacha review for Sunday, June 26th. We mentioned just before Shabbos the idea of the mezonot roll, mezonos rolls. We are talking about traveling on a plane, and you'll notice when they bring you your kosher meal, once you unwrap the 6 or 7 layers of tinfoil and plastic and all the Hebrew seals and all that, you're more often than not faced with a mezonos roll. A little roll, looks like a little bread roll, dinner roll that you would get in any restaurant or with any meal, and it's labeled mezonot, meaning the bracha to be said on it is mezonos, like you would make on cake or a cookie, rather than hamotzi, which is the proper bracha for bread. So, we read in very brief, and I promised you more, herewith more. Let's see. The problem is that when they bring you your meal, how can you wash for bread without climbing over people? Many years, someone suggested that mezonos rolls could substitute for regular bread, thus avoiding this problem. As will be explained below, these rolls are not mezonos. Okay, so then how can I trust the stamp that says kosher on my kosher meal if it says mezonos and it's not mezonos? Okay. What they mean to say is that the tide of rabbinic opinion has shifted against this idea of mezonos rolls, where once upon a time people thought it was a pretty good leniency. Now it is less so. Let us look at the issues a little bit in probably considerably more depth than you had wished to do. If you're not that interested, you could just skip right on to tomorrow. We're going to spend the rest of the time today talking about this idea of mezonos rolls and what it is. Okay, here's the idea. The real question is, it's inconvenient to wash for bread on a plane, right? They have the tray there, the rolling tray, and you have to get up and climb over people if you're in the aisle seat or in the middle seat or the window seat, and then get to the bathroom and take the little coffee cup with you and wash your hands there. It's a whole awkward thing, and then to say Birkat Hamazon afterwards, put on your hat, your jacket, your gartel. It's a whole thing. So they said maybe rather just give you a roll that you could say mezonos and you don't have to say hamotzi. So let's see what they say here first, then I'll add one additional caveat to sort of sweeten the deal a little bit. So here's the idea. You have two brachas for baked goods, right? You have either mezonos, if it's oatmeal, if it's cookies, if it's cake, if it's anything other than bread, and hamotzi for bread. So we're back to the question, so for the square one question, what is this little roll in front of me? So now I'm reading a little bit of him, and we'll explain. Based on the opinion of Rambam, the Shulchan Aruch says that if you knead dough, your bread dough, with honey or milk or fruit juice, and the sweet taste is recognizable in the bread, the blessing on this baked good is mezonot, borei minei mezonot. Thank you, God, who creates all forms of baked goods, sustenance. The Rama, Rabbi Moshe Isserles, who is authoritative for us Ashkenazim, maintains that it has the status of bread. Unless there's a lot of fruit juice or spices. So if you take a cinnamon roll that has flour and water and sugar in it, but it's got a lot of cinnamon and syrup, sugar syrup, and all kinds of stuff, so then that's really more like a cake than a roll, right? But if you have something that looks and tastes like a roll, even the Rama would say that the bracha is hamotzi. Mishnah Brura, as well as other poskim, say that the bracha would only be mezonos if the fruit juice is a main ingredient. So bread, as you know, think about matzah, the simplest bread, flour and water, nothing else. So if it's got flour and something else, like let's say it's made with beer, I guess, or fruit juice or something like that, so then maybe it's a cake or a cookie instead of a bread. So if the fruit juice is the main ingredient, it is mezonos according to Mishnah Brura, and if the taste is, you can sense the taste in the bread. Others say it doesn't have to be the main ingredient, but it has to be a major component. Okay, there's an opinion from a sefer called Das Torah that a mixture which is mostly fruit juice is mezonos, even if you can't taste it. Some claim that this reasoning can be extended to mezonos rolls, which means you would not have to wash, say, hamotzi and birkat hamazon after them. Others disagree and say you should not rely on this. Furthermore, Das Torah only applies to the opinion of Shulchan Aruch, not to the Rama. So Das Torah explains that his chiddush applies only to specific types of juice, none of which are currently used in baking. So it's a very sort of out there psak din in any case. That's one thing. So in other words, what is the actual baked good comprised of? If it tastes and looks and is mostly made of bread components, they say it's bread. Here's two other objections to mazonos rolls. First, the taste of these items is not significantly different than regular bread. People eat the roll in order to have the same experience as eating regular bread. It is bizarre to call it cake. Look, the Jews do a lot of bizarre things. This is probably not the worst of them, at least in my imagination, not about yours. Somebody goes to a ballpark, right, and they take a hot dog in the cooler that's holding the heat instead of the cold, wrapped up in mazonos roll, so they can eat a hot dog or two or three or four without having to wash. So that's what he's talking about, having the experience of bread. You're eating it like it's a hot dog roll. You want to say that it's cake, pretend that it's cake, okay. Even Sephardim who follow the opinion of Shulchan Aruch would wash on these rolls since they are indiscernible from regular breads. That's pretty much true. Now here's the other issue. This is what I was going to talk about. So they sketch it out here. I'll just say in a little bit more depth. Since people are koveya suda and treat it as a full meal, the bracha is hamotzi, even if technically it's mazonos bread. Kvias suda is an important thing. The Torah says v'chalta v'savata v'rachta. You should eat, and when you're satiated and full, you should bless God. That is the biblical source for the mitzvah of Birkat HaMazon, of the blessing after meals. So once you eat a meal, you should, and you're full, you should say a blessing. You should say the Birkat HaMazon. Now, sometimes you're not completely full. You just have maybe a sandwich doesn't fill you up all the way, but it's good enough to get you through. You still say Birkat HaMazon. We're careful, even if you're not completely stuffed or full to capacity. We still say Birkat HaMazon. If you have a cup of coffee and a Danish or two cookies or something with it, so that really is considered a snack. And over that we say the bracha achrona, bracha me'en shalosh, the shortened form of Birkat HaMazon, which is found in the benchers and in your siddur right after Birkat HaMazon. So the question is, where do you draw the line between a meal and a snack? What's the difference? Are you eating just to have something, just to have a little taste of something, or is it really to fill yourself up? So let's talk just about our present case, that meal that they bring you on the plane. Let me see if I can think back to the last time they served a regular meal. So you have maybe a little, some three bean salad or some kind of appetizer, maybe a slice of fish if you're lucky, right? And then you have your tray, the hot thing that they heat up. We could talk about double wrapping and heating anytime you like. And that's got some meat, like some chicken or something in it, some sauce, it's got some vegetables, it's got some starch, maybe lakshan, it could have rice, something like that. So you have a whole thing there. And then on top of that, there's a piece of cake or something, and some fruit, maybe a little fruit cup or something, okay? Is that a snack or is that a meal? That's a meal. That's a full 4-course, 3-course meal. If you're in, I flew first class, I think one time in my life that I remember, and I took my meal over ice the entire flight. It was an hour-and-a-half flight. It wasn't much time to eat. Anyway, be that as it may, if let's say they bring you a 4-course meal with soup and the whole thing, are you going to say that that's a snack? That's a meal. That's called kvias suda. You are establishing a meal. You're sitting down to eat a meal with the intention of becoming satiated, filling up your stomach. Which there's not much else to do on the plane rather than watch the movies or read your book, learn your sefer. So that's called a meal. So are you going to say that, yes, I'm just having this piece of cake beforehand, and so I'll have the short Birkat HaMazon afterwards? No, it's a real meal. And even if the thing you eat is cake, because you're having your piece of cake with your coffee at the end, your tea at the end, so it really is a meal. So it's most appropriate to wash and say hamotzi, and to say Birkat HaMazon afterwards. So you'll ask me, what if you eat a huge plate of pasta, spaghetti, macaroni is mazonos. It's not bread, doesn't have the shape of bread, doesn't look like bread, doesn't taste like bread, but it fills you up. So you eat a gigantic plate of chves, tagliatelle bolognese, whatever you're eating, right? You're full. So it's really most proper to eat a little bit of the garlic bread before, dip it in the olive oil they put on the table, and say Birkat, and have in mind that this is your meal, and say Birkat HaMazon afterwards, rather than just saying mazonos and eating this massive swimming pool size plate of spaghetti. Okay, last point he makes, most apple juice is from concentrate, so it doesn't really have the status as complete fruit juice. In other words, most of what's going into your mazonos roll is really water, and according to all opinions, you should wash. There references an article from Journal of Halacha and Contemporary Society, which I probably have on my bookshelf somewhere. If you want to see it, let me know. So they really go all out here, and they say mazonos rolls are an oxymoron, since mazonos and rolls cannot coexist. Okay, let's not oversell our point here. If you go to stores in New York, actually, you know what, in Toronto also, maybe not Toronto, Thornhill, I've seen it at My Zadie's Bakery, they have some bagels and some rolls in one bin. It's labeled mazonos, means that they made it with fruit juice, mostly fruit juice, instead of instead of water. So if you're in a pinch, you could, for those who hold of this idea of saying mazonos on it, you could. Fortunately, many hechsherim do not allow bakeries to make mazonos. A lot of value judgment applied here. One must wash and bench. You have to wash, say al tos yadayim, say hamotzi, and bench, say birkat hamazon on mazonos rolls. Many poskim say the rolls should only be eaten during a meal where you wash on bread. Okay, that's quite a bit of information on mazonos rolls. I think we'll leave it at that today. If you have any further questions, please speak with me. Don't mean to impede on anybody's halachic practice. If you have any, if you'd like to discuss this or any other issues further, please do not hesitate to be in touch. Have a wonderful week. Please tune in again tomorrow. Bye-bye.